Thank you. And Mr. Radia, you are now recognized 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman Paulson, Representative Beyer, members of the committee. We're at a critical juncture for international trade, and at this time, the United States must maintain its historic role as a global leader and promote free trade and open markets. I'll focus specifically on the information economy. The U.S. technology sector is not just important domestically, but it exports $300 billion annually in products and services, supporting 800,000 American jobs. Tariffs and non-tariff barriers to trade do risk trade in the digital marketplace. I'll focus on another set of policies, however, that threaten digital trade: governmental regulations regarding privacy, copyright, and antitrust. Particularly important is the European Union. Their member states collectively represent America's single largest trading partner in goods and services. And there are 430 million Europeans who use the internet, meaning that Facebook has more European users than American users. Google's more popular as a search engine in Europe than it is in the United States. The same is true for tech companies of all sizes. So although EU users are a core aspect of the user bases of United States technology companies, the European Union's approach to regulation differs dramatically from that in the United States, underscoring the need for greater U.S. leadership in this space. In particular, the European Union, as Mr. Heather mentioned, recently implemented the GDPR, the General Data Protection Regulation. It went into force on May 25th, 2018, and in just over a month, it's already had major effects on how digital trade occurs between the United States and the European Union. Those effects, I believe, will only grow. The GDPR, it applies to any company that processes or controls data on EU data subjects, no matter where the company is domiciled, and in some cases, regardless of the size of that company. The GDPR does not distinguish between offline and online data collection, but the brunt of its impact will be felt and is being felt by technology companies and financial companies. So far, some of the most notable examples of the GDPR include U.S. companies stopping providing service to EU users for fear of regulatory fines, which in the EU can amount to up to 4% of a firm's global revenue. Tronc, formerly Tribune Online, has stopped serving EU users with websites like the Chicago Tribune and the Los Angeles Times. A&E Networks followed suit. An internet analytics firm called Clout that helps social media users and thinkfluencers gauge their reach shut down its operations entirely on May 25th, the day the GDPR went into force. Many other examples, not just in the United States, but around the world, have occurred. The result of this is not just harmful to the EU users who will lose out on American content and American companies who will lose out on revenue from EU users. Even those who comply with the regulation will have a more difficult time monetizing their content. But also it hurts U.S. consumers, because in this industry where fixed costs are high and the marginal cost of delivering content to consumers is low, any reduction in revenue from a major user base means a reduction in the quality of overall service. So the cost of compliance with the GDPR will likely be significant. According to estimates from Ernst & Young and the International Association of Privacy Professionals, the average Fortune 500 company spent $16 million to comply with the GDPR in the 2 years before it went into effect. It seems that the cost of complying with this regulation will only increase. Moreover, the GDPR may entrench existing internet companies at the expense of startups, because large established companies that could not have complied with the GDPR when they were in a dorm room or a garage are now better positioned to do so. The role of U.S. leadership in this space is important. Congress has been considering a number of bills to address privacy. Although I won't discuss the specifics of those bills, it's important that Congress and the administration take a lead in advocating an approach to user privacy and data protection that recognizes the need to reduce compliance costs, that respects the role of notice and choice, and that does not put onerous mandates on businesses. In brief, a couple of other areas in which EU policies are harming or potentially risking harming U.S. businesses include the European digital single market's treatment of copyrighted materials. In general, the European Union's digital single market is a laudable effort to harmonize regulations and taxes across EU member states, but it has also created and will continue to create barriers and restrictions on practices such as geo-blocking and different treatment of content by content owners in the movie industry, streaming platforms, and the like, ultimately hurting consumers. Similarly, the European Union's approach to competition policy has targeted U.S. companies, Record-breaking fines against companies such as Intel, Google, and Microsoft, several of which are still under appeal in the EU courts, have undermined American companies and represent a seeming effort by the EU to engage in protectionism. Thank you for the opportunity to testify, and I look forward to your questions.